Every mother has a dream. Have you ever wondered, what is my mother's dream? When I put aside my best friend's wishes to choose to live for my children, it was still not enough for them. Since when can a child be so greedy and selfish? Though it wasn't yesterday, the feeling of helplessness and shame at the family party still haunts me every second. I am Samantha Miller, 68 years old, a retired art teacher living in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm not the type to complain, but what happened that day at my daughter Claire's house was like a knife twisting in my heart, so deep that I don't know how I'll ever forget it. It was a weekend. The weather was beautiful. Golden sunlight stretched across the small roads leading to Claire's house. My little girl, well, she's 35 now, called me last week, her voice excited on the phone. "Mom, I have good news. I'm pregnant. Come to the party this weekend, okay?" Hearing that, my heart felt lighter, as if all the weariness of old age had vanished. Claire is my youngest, always the cheerful one, even though she now has her own family and a stable job as an accountant. I thought, yes, this is a chance to be closer to her, to see her happy. I spent the whole morning preparing. I wore the blue cardigan that Claire once said makes me look younger, and I meticulously made a batch of butter cookies. The kind Claire used to always ask for when she was little. I packed them carefully in a tin box, thinking she would love them. On the bus to Claire's house, I looked out the window, imagining the whole family gathered, laughing, sharing the joy of the grandchild who would soon be born. I pictured Claire hugging me, introducing me to her friends. This is my mother, the most wonderful person, but life isn't a dream, is it? When I arrived, Claire opened the door, smiling brightly but hastily. "Mom, you're here. Come help me in the kitchen. We have so many guests." I nodded, thinking she must be busy, and as her mother, helping her was only natural. Claire's house was indeed crowded, friends, colleagues, even some neighbors. Laughter filled the air and the smell of barbecue wafted from the backyard. I rolled up my sleeves, started chopping vegetables, arranging cookies on plates, and running back and forth bringing food to the guests. Sweat beaded on my forehead, but I didn't complain. I just wanted my daughter's party to be perfect. But then, things started to go wrong. I noticed Claire didn't ask me to sit with them. Her friends, young people dressed smartly, looked at me like a stranger. One girl, probably Claire's colleague, holding a glass of wine, smiled and asked me, "Have you been working here long? This house is lovely." I froze, my hand that was wiping the table stopping mid-murmur. I was about to say I was Claire's mother, but just then Claire walked by and heard the question. She just smiled faintly, a social smile, and then turned away to talk to someone else. Not a word of correction, not a glance in my direction. My heart felt squeezed, but I bit back my tears and continued wiping the table full of crumbs. I told myself, it's okay, Claire's just busy, she probably didn't notice. But the feeling of being looked down upon grew stronger. I stood in the kitchen, washing a mountain of dishes, while the music and laughter from the living room echoed. No one invited me to sit down. No one asked me what I wanted to eat or drink. I looked at the tin of butter cookies on the counter, untouched. My heart was heavy, but I kept trying. I thought, as long as Claire is happy, I can bear it. Then the worst thing happened. Sam, my grandson, Thomas's son, Claire's older brother, was running around the house. The 6-year-old, mischievous as ever, was holding a bowl of hot soup from the dining table. I was carrying a tray of pastries when Sam bumped into me. The bowl of soup spilled all over my legs, scalding hot. I cried out, the pain so intense I almost fell. The soup soaked through my pants, my skin turned red and burned like it was scalded. But Sam just giggled and ran off to play again, as if nothing had happened. I stood there, my hands trembling, trying to hold back my tears. Linda, Thomas's wife, was standing nearby and saw everything. She shrugged and said nonchalantly, "Kids, you know how they are, a little mischief won't hurt." I looked at Linda, waiting for an apology, whether from Sam or from her, but there was none. Thomas, my son, who was holding a can of beer, glanced at me and said, "Mom, go wash your legs, it's nothing." I was stunned. My son, the one I raised, was now talking to me as if I was overreacting to a burn, and my precious daughter-in-law who cared more about her perfume and handbags than family. tried to look at me with fake guilt to please the crowd. I couldn't take it anymore, I said, my voice trembling but trying to stay calm. Thomas, Linda, you're teaching Sam wrong. He needs to know how to apologize when he hurts someone. I didn't yell, didn't raise my voice, I just wanted them to understand. But then Claire, my daughter, walked in from the living room, having heard that. She looked at me, her eyes sharp, and then said loudly in front of all the guests, "Mom, don't be so hard on the kids. If you don't love them, we won't let you see them anymore." The whole room went silent. I felt every gaze turned to me, not in sympathy, but as if I were the one causing trouble. Claire stood there, hands on her hips, looking at me like I was a stranger. Linda smirked. Thomas looked down but said nothing in my defense. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, my legs burning, my heart aching 100 times more. I wanted to scream, to ask Claire why she could say that to her own mother. But I couldn't. I just silently put down the dishcloth, picked up my purse, and walked out the door. It was dark when I got on the bus home. I sat in the back seat, looking out the window, tears streaming down my face. I didn't cry loudly, just silently, because I knew if I started crying hard, I wouldn't be able to stop. I thought about Claire, about Thomas, about the years I had sacrificed to raise them. I remembered the sleepless nights working extra jobs, the days I went without food so they could have new clothes. I even remembered the dream of being an artist that I had put aside, just so they could have a home. Yet today, I was just the help in their eyes, someone not worthy of respect, not worthy of love. When I got home, I sat in the living room, not turning on the light. My small house was silent, only the ticking of the clock. I looked at the family photo on the shelf, me, my husband, Thomas, and Claire when they were little. My husband passed away over 30 years ago, leaving me with 2 children and a mountain of debt. I had done everything to raise them, to give them a better life than I had, but now, I wondered, where had I gone wrong? Why did my children treat me like this? That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I lay on the old bed, the thin blanket pulled across me, but my mind kept racing. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to remind me that time was still passing, even though my heart felt stuck in the moment Claire had scolded me in front of everyone. My small house was silent, but the memories were loud, pulling me back to the days I had lived, had sacrificed, and had lost myself. I sat up and turned on the old bedside lamp. The weak yellow light cast shadows on the wall, highlighting the family photo frame on the shelf. I took the frame down and gently wiped away the thin layer of dust. It was a photo taken over 30 years ago. Me, my husband, Frank, Thomas at just 5 years old, and Claire as a tiny baby, nestled in my arms. Frank was smiling radiantly, his eyes bright as if to say, this life was worth living. I looked at myself in the photo. A young woman, her hair pulled back, a smile full of hope. I didn't recognize her anymore. Frank passed away when Claire was only 12 and Thomas was 16. A truck accident, on the highway, so fast that I didn't even get to say goodbye. He was a mechanic, a simple man who loved his family but was never good at managing money. When he died, I held my 2 children, facing a pile of bills and the debt from the truck he had bought to open his own repair shop. I didn't cry in front of the children. I just said, "Mom will take care of it." And I did, by any means necessary. I stood up and walked into the living room, where the house still held traces of the past. The wooden table with a chipped corner where Thomas had carved his name. With a knife when he was little, the old armchair that Claire loved to sit in and read, even though it was now worn out. I opened the drawer of the cabinet and took out an old notebook, where I used to record the most difficult days. The scribbled lines told of me teaching art at the middle school, taking on evening classes, and baking cakes to sell on weekends to have money for the children's school fees. I never told them. I didn't want them to see their mother struggling. I just wanted them to grow up and have a better life than I had. I used to have a dream, though now, when I think about it, it feels like someone else's story. I wanted to be an artist. In college, I studied fine arts, painted oil paintings, and dreamed of one day having my work displayed in a gallery. I remember the nights sitting in the dorm room, mixing colors under the dim light, imagining my paintings hanging in New York, But then Frank came along. We fell in love, had Thomas, and then Claire. That dream was put aside, tucked away in a corner, like the paintbrush I kept in a wooden box under the bed. When Frank died, I no longer had time to dream. I had to be a mother, a father, everything. I sat down on the chair, the notebook in my hands, and remembered a special night 10 years ago. Claire had pneumonia then and was in the hospital for a whole week. I sat by her bedside, watching her breathe weakly, my heart breaking. That night, when Claire was asleep, I went home, took out my paintbrush, and painted. I painted an oil painting. A field of flowers under a gray sky, but in the distance, a small ray of sunlight was breaking through the clouds. I don't know why I painted it, I just knew I needed to do something to keep from falling apart. That painting, I put it away thinking no one would ever see it. But then, an art collector happened to see it when I took it out to dust during a spring cleaning. He said the painting had soul, had a story. He paid $1 million, 0 cents to buy it. I was stunned, unable to believe it. I didn't spend a single penny. I deposited it all in the bank, thinking it would be a gift for Thomas and Claire when I was no longer here. I didn't tell them because I didn't want them to think their mother was rich. I just wanted them to love me for who I was, not for my money. I closed the notebook and placed it on the table. My mind returned to the party the day before, the way Claire had looked at me, the way Thomas had told me to wash my legs. I wondered, what had I done wrong? I had given them everything, love, time, effort. I went without food so they could have new clothes, gave up my dreams so they could have a future. Yet now, I was just the help. Someone to be scolded in front of a crowd. I thought about Sam, my grandson, the boy who didn't know how to apologize when he hurt me. I thought about Linda, about her smirk. I thought about Claire, my daughter, the one I used to love more than myself, now standing there, saying I didn't love her children. Tears fell from my eyes, silently, without a sound. I wasn't crying because I was angry, but because I was hurt. Hurt because I had given so much, but received nothing in return. Not even a little respect. I looked out the window, the sky still pitch black. I thought, maybe I was wrong to live only for my children. Maybe I had forgotten myself, forgotten Samantha, the one who used to dream of being an artist, the one who smiled radiantly in the old photo. I stood up, opened the wooden box under the bed, and took out my paintbrush. It was old, the bristles stiff and dry from years of disuse. I held it, feeling like I was holding on to a part of myself. I didn't know what I would do next. I just knew I didn't want to live like this anymore. Didn't want to be a shadow of myself. I needed to find Samantha again, even if just once, before it was too late. I sat there until the sky began to lighten, the paintbrush in my hand, my heart heavy but with a glimmer of hope. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew I couldn't let the pain of today swallow me whole. Never again. The morning after the party, I sat in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee. Sunlight streamed through the window, but it did nothing to warm my heart. The old paintbrush I had taken out the night before lay on the table, a reminder of dreams I had missed. I looked at it, my heart heavy, not knowing what to do with the pain that pressed down on my chest. I didn't leave the house all day. The phone was silent, not a single text or call from Claire or Thomas. I thought, maybe they don't realize how hurt I am. Maybe they don't care. I tried to do things to distract myself, cleaning the house, watering the plants, but everything felt meaningless. My mind kept going back to the moment Claire had scolded me, the way Thomas had told me to wash my legs, as if I was overreacting. I wondered, what kind of mother had I been that my children would treat me this way? By afternoon, I couldn't stand the silence of the house anymore. I needed to talk to someone who would understand me. I immediately thought of Jane, my best friend from college. Jane was completely different from me. A single chef living in Napa, always cheerful and never letting life get her down. We had studied art together, spent hours in the studio, dreaming about the future. But then I got married, had children, while Jane chose to live freely, cooking and making people laugh with her food. Despite the distance, we had stayed in touch, as if time couldn't fade our friendship. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Jane's number. It had been a while since I had called her, not wanting to disturb her happy life. The phone rang a few times. Then Jane's voice came through, warm as the California sun. "Sam!" "Oh my goodness, it's been so long. What's going on that you're calling me?" Hearing her voice, I almost cried. I tried to stay calm, but could only say, "Jane, I need to talk." I told her everything, every detail about the party, the way Claire had ushered me into the kitchen, the question, "How long have you been working here?" that no one corrected, the hot soup spilled on my legs, and Claire's words, "If you don't love the kids, we won't let you see them anymore." I told her, my voice choked with emotion, tears falling onto the kitchen table. I told Jane that I had sacrificed my whole life for my children, had given up my dream of being an artist, had done everything to give them a good life. But now I was just like the help, someone not worthy of respect. Jane didn't interrupt me. She listened, silently, only occasionally saying, "Uh-huh," to let me know she was still there. When I finished, I heard her sigh over the phone. "Sam," she said, her voice slow but firm, "you've done everything for them. But now you have to do something for yourself. You deserve to live, to be happy, not just be someone's mother." I was speechless. Live for myself? I hadn't thought about that, not since Frank passed away and I became the sole support for Thomas and Claire. I said to Jane, my voice weak, "I don't know how, Jane. I don't know where to start." She chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that reminded me of our younger days, when we used to dream together in the art studio. "Then come with me," she said. "Come to Tossa de Mar, a small town in Spain by the Mediterranean Sea. The sea is beautiful, the people are friendly, and you can paint again. Just for a few weeks, Sam. You need to breathe, you need to find yourself again. I'm having a food and healthy lifestyle forum there soon." I was stunned. Spain? Leave everything behind to go so far? I thought of Claire, of Thomas, of Sam, of this house. I said, "Jane, I can't. The kids will think I'm selfish. I'm their mother, I have to be here." But Jane didn't give in. "Sam, you're not abandoning them. You're just giving yourself a chance. They're grown up, they have their own lives. And you need to live for yourself, even if just once." Jane's words were like a gentle slap, awakening something within me. I thought about the years I had put my dream aside, about the $1 million painting I hadn't dared to spend, about the old paintbrush that had been lying silent for so many years. I thought about the way I had been treated at the party, as if I were nothing. And I wondered, if I didn't live for myself now, then when? I was silent for a moment, then said, "Jane, I'm scared, but I'll go." Jane cheered over the phone. "That's my Sam. I'll book the ticket right away, flying next week. You just need to bring your paintbrush and a few sets of clothes. I'll take care of everything else." I smiled, the first time in days. A weak smile, but genuine. In the days that followed, I prepared like a sleepwalker. I packed a few sweaters, jeans, and my old paintbrush. I didn't tell Claire or Thomas. I didn't want to hear their reproaches, didn't want to see their indifferent eyes. I just left a note on the kitchen table. "Going on vacation for a while. Don't worry." I didn't know if they would worry or not, but I knew I needed to do this, even if just to save myself. On the day of the flight, I sat at the airport, clutching my small bag. I watched the people passing by, families laughing, couples holding hands. I wondered what I was doing, a 68-year-old woman, leaving home to go to Spain with an old friend. I was scared, truly scared. Scared I would fail, scared I wouldn't find the Samantha of the old days. But as the plane took off, I looked out the window, saw the white clouds drifting slowly, and I felt a little relief. For the first time in years, I was doing something just for me. I didn't know what Tossa de Mar would bring. I didn't know if I would find myself again, or if it would just be a meaningless trip. But I knew I couldn't stay here, in the house full of memories, in the pain my children had left behind. I needed to breathe, needed to live, even if just once. When the plane landed in Barcelona, I still couldn't believe I was actually doing this. I had lived more than half my life, but it had been so long since I had stood in a foreign country, carrying a small suitcase with a few sets of clothes and my old paintbrush once again. Jane stood beside me, smiling as brightly as the California sun. "Sam, welcome to Spain," she exclaimed, her voice full of life. I looked at her, trying to force a smile, but my heart was still a tangled mess. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I needed to get away from the pain at home, away from the feeling of being seen as superfluous by my children. We took a car to Tossa de Mar, a small coastal town on the Mediterranean. The road was winding, with lush green olive groves and vibrant red-roofed houses on either side. Jane excitedly talked about the cooking forum she was about to attend, about the tapas she wanted to try, but I just quietly looked out the window. The sea appeared, deep blue, sparkling under the sun. I took a deep breath, feeling the air here was light, as if it could wash away some of the heaviness in my heart. I thought about the note I had left on the kitchen table. Going on vacation for a while, I wondered if Claire and Thomas had read it, if they cared, or if they would just ignore the fact that their mother wouldn't be in contact for the next month or so. But then I pushed that thought away. I needed to be here, even if just to save myself. Jane rented a small apartment in the center of town. The apartment had a balcony overlooking the sea, the windows always open to let in the scent of salt and the sound of the waves. The living room was simple, a wooden table, a few chairs, and an old mural depicting a seascape. Jane patted my shoulder. "This is our home for the next few weeks, Sam. What do you think?" I nodded, even though I still wasn't used to being here, far from home, far from my children, far from the life I had lived for decades. I put down my suitcase, opened it, and placed my old paintbrush on the table. It lay there, a reminder that I used to be someone else, someone who dreamed of being an artist. On the first day, Jane dragged me out. "You can't just sit inside and brood," she said, shoving a fish sandwich into my hand. We walked along the cobblestone streets, the white-walled houses adorned with vibrant red bougainvillea. Locals sat on their porches, chatting animatedly. Children chased each other in the square. I looked at them, feeling both strange and familiar. They lived at a slow pace, as if time wasn't something to race against. At home, I was always busy, worrying about my children, my grandchildren, worrying about everything except myself. Here, I didn't know what I was supposed to worry about, and that made me feel both relieved and lost. Jane stopped at a corner of the square, where a few people were painting. "Sam, look." She pointed to an old man painting a picture of the castle on the hill. "You can do that?" "Take out your brush, paint." I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Jane, I haven't painted in so long. I don't know if I can still do it." But Jane wouldn't give up. She pulled me into a small shop, bought a foldable easel, some tubes of oil paint, and a pad of paper. "You are an artist, Sam," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You've just forgotten it. Now is the time to remember." The next day, I reluctantly set up my easel in the square. Jane was busy with the cooking forum, leaving me alone. I stood there, paintbrush in hand, looking at the crowd passing by. Tourists, locals, children playing. I didn't know where to start. I was afraid I would mess up, afraid I no longer had the ability I once did. Finally, I chose to paint a corner of the street. A small cafe with a few wooden tables, some people sipping wine, and a boy flying a kite in the square. I mixed the colors slowly, each brushstroke hesitant on the paper. For the first time in years, I felt the freedom in each stroke. No one was pressuring me. No one needed me to do anything else. It was just me, the paintbrush, and the story I wanted to tell. An old woman walked by and stopped to look. She said something in Spanish that I didn't understand, but her smile warmed my heart. She pointed at the painting, gave me a thumbs up, and then handed me a small bottle of wine, probably homemade. I thanked her awkwardly, only knowing how to say, "Gracias." After her, a few more people stopped, complimenting my painting, even though I wasn't charging anything. A young girl, probably a tourist, took a picture of the painting and asked, "Are you selling it? It's beautiful." I shook my head, smiling. "I'm just painting for fun." The girl nodded, saying something about how I should have an exhibition. But I just smiled, not taking it seriously. In the days that followed, I painted more. I painted the sea at sunset, the red sun sinking below the horizon, small boats swaying on the waves. I painted children playing on the beach, old women selling flowers at the market, the winding cobblestone streets. Each painting was a piece of me, as if I was finding myself again through each brushstroke. I started to get used to the rhythm of life here, waking up early, having coffee with Jane, then going to the square to paint until the afternoon. I was no longer bothered by the gazes of passers-by. I was no longer afraid of not being good enough. I just painted, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living. Jane, after each day at the forum, came home with stories of new dishes she had learned. She cooked tapas, garlic shrimp, spicy potatoes, or fragrant paella. Poured wine, and we sat on the balcony, laughing and talking until late. I told her about the people who looked at my paintings, about the old woman who gave me wine, about the boy flying the kite who now often came to watch me paint. Jane laughed loudly. "See, Sam, you were born to paint. You just needed a place to remember that." I looked at her, grateful for having a friend like Jane, who not only pulled me out of the darkness, but also showed me that I could still shine. One evening, Jane took out her phone and showed me a photo she had taken of me painting in the square. I was standing there, my hair loosely tied back, wearing my blue cardigan, my expression focused. "Can I post this online?" she asked. I shrugged, not thinking much of it. "Whatever you want, but who would care?" Jane smiled mysteriously and posted the photo with the caption, "My friend, a wonderful artist, living her truth in Tossa de Mar." I didn't pay it much mind, just thinking it was one of Jane's fun things. I didn't know that this photo would draw me into a storm I wasn't ready to face. In Tossa de Mar, I began to feel lighter. The pain from the party was still there, but it no longer suffocated me every day. I didn't know how long I would stay here. Jane said to stay as long as I wanted. Truthfully, I didn't want to leave yet. I wanted to paint more, to feel this sense of freedom more. I wanted to find the Samantha of the old days again. The one who used to dream, used to laugh loudly, used to believe that this life was worth living. Life, as they say, never leaves you in peace for too long. After only a few weeks here, everything started to turn upside down, as if the past refused to let me go. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of distant waves and the smell of coffee Jane made in the kitchen. I went to the square, set up my easel, and painted the cobblestone streets, the boats offshore, or the children playing. The people of Tossa de Mar began to recognize me. They called me La Pintora, the painter, even though I never considered myself one. An old fishmonger would often give me some fresh fish, saying it was to thank me because my paintings made the town more beautiful. A little girl named Maria, probably about 8 years old, would often come to watch me paint, her eyes wide with wonder as she saw the colors appear on the paper. Those moments made me feel alive again, as if the Samantha of the old days, the girl who dreamed of being an artist, was returning. But then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was painting a picture of the castle on the hill, the golden sunlight shining brightly on the ancient stone walls. A group of young tourists stopped to take pictures of me and my easel. I didn't pay much attention. This happened often. But that day, one of the girls in the group, a blonde with her hair pulled back, turned around and asked, "Do you have Instagram? I want to post this painting. It's so beautiful." I smiled and shook my head. "I don't use those things, dear. But you can post it if you like." The girl smiled brightly, saying she would tag Tossa de Mar so everyone would know. I nodded, thinking it was just a fleeting moment. I didn't expect that photo, along with other posts from tourists, to start spreading. They called me the old painter in Tossa de Mar, writing things like, "She paints like she's telling a story, you have to see it," or "a hidden gem of Spain." Jane, who was more into social media than I was, found out first. One evening, she was sitting on the balcony, scrolling through her phone, when she suddenly exclaimed, "Sam, you're famous!" I frowned, not understanding. She showed me her phone. Dozens of posts, photos of me painting, admiring comments from strangers all over. I was stunned, not knowing whether to laugh or worry. "Jane, who has time to care about an old woman painting?" I said, trying to sound nonchalant. But deep down, I felt strange, as if I were living in an unreal story. Then Jane kept scrolling, and the smile on her face faded. "Sam, you should see this," she said, her voice lower. She handed me the phone. It was a post about me, a photo of me painting in the square, and in the comments section there was a name I never wanted to see again. Linda. Thomas's wife, she wrote. "This is my mother-in-law, so proud to see her painting so beautifully," followed by a heart icon. I read it again and again, feeling something catch in my throat. Proud? Linda, who had smirked when Sam spilled hot soup on my legs, who hadn't bothered to apologize, now dared to say she was proud? I looked at Jane, saying nothing, but she understood. "Sickeningly fake, isn't it?" Jane said, her voice full of contempt. I nodded, feeling insulted. Linda wasn't proud of me. She just wanted to show off, to bask in the glow I hadn't even sought. I tried to brush it off, but my heart was uneasy. I thought about Linda, about Thomas, about Claire. Did they know I was here? Had they seen these posts? I wondered if they would call me, if they would apologize for what had happened at the party. But my phone remained silent. Not a single text, not a single call. I told myself, maybe they didn't care, just like they hadn't paid attention to the note I had left. I tried to focus on painting, on the peaceful days in Tossa di Mar, but the feeling of unease grew stronger. Then one morning, Jane received a call from a mutual friend in Philadelphia. She listened, her face turning pale, then turned to me. "Sam, you need to know about this," she said, her voice serious. "The neighbor nearby just told me. Thomas and Claire went to your house. They were looking for you, and they found a notice from the bank." I froze, my heart pounding. The bank? I suddenly remembered. 10 years ago, I had sold the oil painting for $1 million 0 cents and deposited it all in a savings account. I hadn't spent a single penny, keeping it for Thomas and Claire's future. Every quarter, the bank sent an interest statement, and I guessed they had seen it when they were rummaging through my house. Jane continued, her voice full of exasperation. "The friend said Thomas and Claire were shocked to learn I was in Spain, and even more shocked to see the bank notice. They couldn't believe I had so much money, couldn't believe I had kept it from them. Thomas, according to the friend, had gotten angry, saying I was selfish for not sharing. Claire had been crying, saying she was worried about me. But Jane scoffed. Worried? If they were really worried, they would have called you a long time ago." I sat there, clutching my mug of coffee, feeling betrayed once again. They weren't looking for me because they missed their mother, weren't looking for me to apologize. They were looking for me because of the money. That night, Thomas called. The phone rang while Jane and I were having dinner. I looked at the screen, Thomas's name appearing, and my heart sank. Jane squeezed my hand, gesturing for me to answer. I took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. "Mom, where are you?" Thomas's voice rang out, sharp, without a greeting. "Why do you have $1 million 0 cents and didn't say anything? Do you know how much trouble I'm in? Why are you so selfish?" I was speechless, unable to believe what I was hearing. My son, the one I raised, was now accusing me of being selfish, just because I hadn't given him money. I wanted to scream. Wanted to tell him about the nights I went without food so he could have new clothes, about the painting I had painted through tears to get that money. But I couldn't speak. I just replied, my voice ice cold, "Thomas, I don't owe you anything." Then I hung up. I sat there looking out at the balcony, the sea pitch black in the distance. Jane said nothing, just poured me more wine. I thought about Linda, about her fake comment. I thought about Thomas, about the way he had called me selfish. I thought about Claire, about how she was probably thinking the same as her brother. Tears fell from my eyes, but not many. I wasn't crying because I was sad anymore. I was crying because I was angry, because I was disappointed, because I realized my children weren't the children I had sacrificed my whole life to protect. I looked at the paintbrush on the table, thinking about the paintings I had painted in Tossa di Mar. They were mine, my story, not Thomas's. After that call, I sat on the balcony of the small apartment, looking at the pitch-black sea, my heart heavy. Jane sat beside me, saying nothing, just pouring more wine. I knew I couldn't stay here, running away forever. I had to go back, had to face my children, the pain, and myself. Not for them, but because I wanted to end this vicious cycle. The decision to go back to America wasn't easy. I loved Taça de Mar, loved the mornings painting in the square, loved the smile of little Maria, loved the evenings laughing with Jane, but I knew that if I didn't confront Thomas and Claire, I would never truly be free. Jane didn't agree at first. "Sam, you're doing so well here. Don't let them pull you back into the darkness," she said, her eyes worried. I took her hand, my voice firm. "I have to go, Jane. Not to make amends, but to say what needs to be said. I don't want to carry this pain for the rest of my life." Jane sighed, but nodded. She booked my plane ticket while she stayed for a few more weeks because of the cooking forum. The flight back to Philadelphia was long and tiring. I sat by the window, watching the clouds drift by, thinking about what I was about to face. I didn't expect my children to apologize. I no longer believed they would. I just wanted to say everything, wanted them to hear what I had kept in my heart for so many years. When the plane landed, it was drizzling, as if the weather understood my mood. I went back to my small house, opened the door, and saw everything was as I had left it. The note, "Going on vacation for a while," was still on the kitchen table, but the edges were crumpled, as if someone had read it and thrown it back down. I guessed it was Thomas or Claire. I didn't contact them right away. I needed time to prepare, to regain my strength. I cleaned the house, dusted the family photo frame, looked at the faces of Frank, Thomas, and Claire when they were little. I thought about the days I was a mother, a father, doing everything so they could have a good life. I thought about the $1 million painting, the money I had kept for them, but now they saw it as something they had a right to demand. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired of giving so much and receiving nothing but hurt in return. A few days later, I called Thomas and Claire. I said briefly, "I'm back. Come to my house tomorrow night at 7. It's important." Thomas replied curtly, "Okay, Mom." Claire was hesitant. "Yes, Mom, are you all right?" I didn't answer that question, just said, "Be on time." I also called Linda, even though I didn't want to see her. I wanted everyone there, so no one could say I wasn't fair. That evening, I prepared as if going to battle. I set the dining table, put out a few plates of cookies and water, not for guests, but because it was my habit. I wore my blue cardigan, the one Claire used to say made me look young, but I wasn't wearing it for her anymore. I wore it because I liked it. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at my face, the wrinkles, the gray hair, but my eyes were still bright. I told myself, "Sam, you can do this. You don't owe them anything." Right at 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Thomas arrived first with Linda and Sam. The little boy ran in, hugged my legs, grinning. "Grandma!" I patted his head but didn't smile. Linda followed, her fake smile like her Instagram comments. "Mom, you look great, so young," she said, her voice as sweet as sugar. I nodded, not replying. Thomas just gave a short greeting, his eyes avoiding mine. Claire arrived 10 minutes late, holding her pregnant belly, apologizing for the traffic. She looked at me, her eyes hesitant, but I said nothing, just invited everyone in. We sat around the dining table, the atmosphere heavy. Sam ran to the corner of the room to play with his toys, while the 4 adults remained, silent as if waiting for a storm. I took a deep breath and began. "I called you here because I need to say a few things. After tonight, I won't bring it up again." I looked at each of them, my voice slow but firm. For the past few weeks, I was in Spain. Not to run away, but to find myself again. Do you know why I went? Tomas frowned, about to say something, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Let me finish." At Claire's party, I was treated like the help. Someone asked how long I had been working there, and Claire, you heard it but said nothing. Sam spilled hot soup on my legs. It hurt so much I almost fell, but Linda, you just laughed and said kids'll be kids. Thomas, you told me to wash my legs. It's nothing. And Claire, you scolded me in front of everyone, saying if I didn't love your children, I wouldn't be allowed to see them anymore. I paused, taking a deep breath, feeling my heart pounding. Do you know how that made me feel? Like I was nothing, not worthy of respect. Your own friends thought I was the help, and none of my children spoke up for me. Linda looked down, muttering, "Mom, we didn't mean to." I cut her off. "Don't say you didn't mean to. You didn't mean to, but you also didn't correct it." I looked at Thomas, my voice harder. "Then I left, and you looked for me, not because you were worried, but because you saw the bank notice. $1 million, 0 cents, the money I earned from the painting I painted when Claire was in the hospital, when I thought I couldn't go on. I kept it for you, but you didn't thank me. Thomas, you called me, accused me of being selfish for not giving you the money. You must have a terrible memory to say those things, because you don't seem to remember what I did for you when you were unemployed for 3 years, the money I gave you that would have been enough for me to live comfortably in my old age for the next 30 years, all of you. It's cruel and shameful to have to call the children I gave birth to ungrateful." Claire started to cry, but I didn't stop. "I don't need your apologies. I don't want to hear them anymore. I just want you to know. I've lived my whole life for you, but I can't do it anymore." I stood up and went to get a stack of papers from the shelf. The house sale contract I had prepared. "I'm going to sell this house, the house you grew up in. I'll split the money in half for Thomas and Claire. But the $1 million, 0 cents, I'm going to use to help single mothers, homeless children, people who really need it, because I see you don't deserve it." Thomas jumped up, his face red. "Mom, you can't do that. That's family money." I looked straight into his eyes, my voice cold. "Family? Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Linda grumbled something, but I didn't hear it. Claire covered her face, sobbing, but I wasn't moved. I had cried too many tears for them. "Not anymore. Go home," I said, opening the door. "I don't want to see you again until you understand how much you've hurt me." Thomas walked out without looking back. Linda pulled Sam along, muttering something about how unfair I was. Claire lingered, trying to say, "Mom, But I shook my head. "Go home, Claire." She walked out, her shoulders shaking. When the door closed, I sat down on the chair, my hands trembling. I didn't cry, but my heart ached. I had said everything, had done what needed to be done, but why did I still feel so empty? I looked at the family photo frame on the shelf, thinking about Frank, about the days we were a real family. Now it was just me, alone, but I knew I had made the right choice. I didn't owe my children anything anymore. Never again. The house was silent, only the ticking of the clock. I looked at the family photo frame on the shelf, the faces of Frank, Thomas, and Claire when they were little. But I didn't cry. I had cried too many tears for them, had suffered too much because of what they did. Now, I just felt tired, but in that weariness, I felt a bit of relief, as if a burden that had been on my shoulders for decades had finally been lifted. The next morning, I woke up early. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating the old wooden floor. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, looking at the house sale contract I had ready. The decision to sell this house wasn't easy. This was where Frank and I bought when we first got married, where Thomas learned to ride a bike, where Claire practiced drawing her scribbled pictures. Every corner of the house was full of memories, but I knew that if I kept it, I would forever be trapped in the past. I needed to move on, not for my children, but for myself. I called a real estate company and made an appointment to sign the papers. The agent, a middle-aged woman named Susan, came to the house in the afternoon. She looked around, nodding. "This house is old but solid. You'll get a good price for it." I nodded, not saying much. I didn't care about the price. I just wanted it out of my life. Susan asked me what I planned to do after selling the house, and I replied, my voice calm, "Find a new place, live for myself." She smiled, as if she understood what I wasn't saying. While waiting for the house to sell, I started to clean up. I packed away things I didn't need, old clothes, books, Thomas and Claire's toys from when they were little. I kept a few things, the family photo frame, Frank's wedding ring, and the old paintbrush I had taken to Tassa de Mar. Each item I touched brought back memories, but I didn't let myself dwell on them. I told myself, I'm not erasing the past, just rearranging it to make room for the future. A week later, I found a small house in the suburbs, about a 30-minute drive from Philadelphia. It wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a small garden in the back, and a porch big enough to sit and drink coffee. I liked its simplicity, as if it was made for someone like me, not needing much, just enough. I signed the purchase contract right away, using my own savings, not touching the money from the $1 million painting. That money, I had decided, would go to those who truly needed it, as I had told my children. On moving day, I didn't call anyone for help. I packed my things myself, rented a small truck, and drove everything to the new place. When I set the last box down on the living room floor, I stood there, looking around. The house was empty, but I didn't feel lonely. I hung some of the paintings I had done in Tosa de Mar on the walls. The one of the sunset over the sea, the one of the boy flying a kite. They reminded me of the days I had truly lived, and I wanted to keep that feeling here. I started thinking about what to do next. I didn't want to sit idle. Didn't want the pain about my children to fill my days. One morning, while reading the local newspaper, I saw an article about a nearby community center. They were looking for volunteers to teach art to children, especially those from disadvantaged families. I didn't hesitate. I called the number in the article right away. The woman on the other end, named Rachel, was enthusiastic when she heard my voice. "You used to be an art teacher? Wonderful! We really need someone like you." The following week, I started my first art class. There were about 10 children in the class, ranging from 8 to 14 years old, each with their own story. There was a boy named Miguel, 10 years old, thin, with bright but shy eyes. He told me his mother worked 2 jobs to support her 3 children, and he liked to draw because it makes me forget I'm tired. I looked at Miguel, seeing a part of myself, someone who had used art to overcome suffering. I taught the children how to mix colors, how to draw what they saw in their hearts. Miguel drew a picture of his mother, a woman standing in the sunlight, holding a bouquet of flowers. When he showed it to me, I almost cried. "It's beautiful, Miguel," I said, patting his head. At that moment, I knew I had found something meaningful. Teaching art to these children made me feel alive again. Every week, I went to the center, bringing paints, paper, and even cookies I baked myself. The children loved the cookies, loved hearing me talk about Tosa de Mar, about the old woman who gave me wine. I didn't talk about my children, didn't talk about the pain. I only told them things that made me laugh, and the children laughed along. I realized that helping these children wasn't just about teaching them to draw, but about showing them they had value, had dreams, just like I was finding my own value again. Jane called me a few weeks later, saying she was coming back to America soon. "I'll come visit you, Sam. I'll bring tarts and wine, just like in Tosa." She laughed loudly over the phone. I agreed immediately. When Jane arrived, she walked into my new house, looked around, nodding. "Simple, but it's you, Sam." We sat on the porch, eating tarts, drinking wine, and talking about everything, from our days in Spain to my art class. Jane looked at me, her eyes bright. "You're stronger than you think, Sam. I'm proud of you." I smiled. The first time that compliment truly felt meaningful. But that night, when Jane was asleep, I sat alone on the porch, looking at the dark garden. I thought about Thomas and Claire, wondering what they were doing, if they ever thought about me. I wasn't angry with them anymore, but I also didn't want to see them. I had given them everything I had, and now I needed to keep something for myself. I looked up at the sky, the stars twinkling, and thought about Frank. If he were here, what would he say? Maybe he would hug me, tell me I had done the right thing, that I deserved to live for myself. I stood up, went inside, and took out my paintbrush. I started to paint on a small piece of paper a picture of my garden, with the flowers I planned to plant. It wasn't the most beautiful painting, but it was mine. My new beginning. I knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. But even as I tried to build a new life, the past found ways to creep in. Like the way a letter from Thomas appeared, stirring up my heart. Things had started to settle down after 6 months in my new house. I had gotten used to the slow pace of life, making coffee in the morning, watering the roses that were now blooming in the garden, then driving to the community center to teach my art class. The children, especially Miguel, made me laugh every day. The little boy was less shy now, often telling me about the paintings he wanted to do. One day, he said, he would paint the whole world. I looked at him, seeing a bit of Claire from the old days, when she used to sit beside me, painting colorful houses. But I pushed that thought away. I didn't want to remember Claire, Thomas, or what they had done. One afternoon, I came home after class and found a white envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name handwritten on the front. Samantha Miller. The handwriting was familiar, making my heart beat faster. I knew it was from Thomas. I held the letter, standing still at the door, not sure if I wanted to open it or not. Finally, I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and placed the envelope in front of me. I looked at it for a long time, as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment. I made a cup of tea, trying to calm myself, then opened the envelope. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. Thomas's handwriting. The letters, firm but slightly shaky, as if he had written in a moment of emotion. I took a deep breath and began to read. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this letter, but I have to write it. I've thought a lot since that day at your house when you said things I'll never forget. I know I was wrong, that I hurt you. I have no excuses. I just want you to know I'm sorry, even though I know this apology probably isn't enough. You were right, I was selfish. I only thought about myself, my own difficulties, my small family, without thinking about how much you sacrificed. I remember the days you worked late bringing cookies home for Claire and me, even though you were so tired you could barely stand. I remember you sitting by my bed when I was sick, singing me to sleep. But I forgot, Mom. I forgot that you're not just a mother, but a woman. Someone with dreams, with her own life. Linda and I have separated. Not because of the money, but because I realized we weren't on the same page anymore. I'm trying to start over, trying to be a better father to Sam, a better son to you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know I'm trying, and I regret hurting you. If you want to meet, I'll come anytime. If you don't, I'll respect that. But I hope that one day, you'll give me a chance to make things right. I love you, Thomas. I finished reading, put the letter down, my hands trembling. I didn't cry, but my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I thought about Thomas, about the little boy who used to follow me around asking to draw with me, about the man who now accused me of being selfish for not giving him money. His apology, I knew it was genuine, but it came too late. I had waited for it at the party, in the call from Spain, but now, when I had built a new life, it only made me feel confused. Should I feel sympathy for my son or gloat and say, I knew your life with that woman would fall apart someday? I called Jane and told her about the letter. Jane, as usual, was blunt. Sam, you don't have to forgive him. You don't owe him anything. If you want to keep your distance, do it. Don't let him pull you back into that old hole. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me over the phone. Jane was right. But I couldn't deny that the letter made me think. Not about forgiving, but about what I wanted for the future. I didn't want to see Thomas. Didn't want to open my heart again, but I also didn't want to carry this pain forever. I put the letter in a small wooden box, along with Frank's wedding ring and some of the paintings I had done in Tossa de Mar. I didn't reply to Thomas. Didn't call him back. I just wrote a short line on a piece of paper and sent it by mail. I received your letter. I need time. I didn't make any promises. Didn't open the door for him to step back in. I just wanted him to know I had heard him. But I wasn't ready, and maybe never would be. In the days that followed, I went back to my art class, focusing on the children. Miguel started working on a bigger painting of a colorful city where everyone was smiling. The little boy said, Miss Sam, I want my mom to live here, where no one is sad. I smiled, but my heart ached. I thought about Claire, about Thomas, about Sam. I wondered if they lived in such a city, or if they were also struggling with their own sadness. But I pushed that thought away. I couldn't save them, couldn't fix what was broken. I could only save myself. One evening, I sat on the porch, painting a new picture. A road leading to the sea, like in Tosa de Mar. I painted slowly, each brushstroke a reminder that I was on the right path. I thought about Thomas's letter, about the words he had written. I wasn't angry with him anymore, but I couldn't forget the way he had hurt me. I didn't want to forgive, not because I was mean, but because I needed to protect myself, protect the Samantha I had found again after so many years. I looked up at the sky, the stars twinkling, and thought about Frank. If he were here, maybe he would say, "Sam, you're doing well, keep living, keep painting." Thomas's letter was a scar, but I wouldn't let it define me. I thought I could continue like that, living for myself, for the things that made me smile. But then Claire appeared, and everything got tangled again, as if fate didn't want me to have peace. In the days after sending the short note to Thomas, I tried to maintain my normal routine. Every morning, I made coffee, watered the new rose bushes in the garden, then drove to the community center. Miguel and the children were still my light. The little boy had now finished his painting of the colorful city, and when he showed it to me, he beamed. "Miss Sam, I'm going to paint another one, for you." I patted his head, my heart warm. Moments like these made me feel that life was worthwhile, even if it was just small joys. But one afternoon, when I had just arrived home, the doorbell rang. I frowned, not expecting anyone. I opened the door and there stood Claire, holding a newborn baby girl, her eyes red, her hair disheveled. My little girl, no, now a 36-year-old woman, stood there, hesitant, as if unsure if she was welcome. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling, I came to see you. It was so hard to find this address." I froze, my hand gripping the doorknob. I hadn't expected Claire to come, not after what had happened, not after the words I had spoken that night. I looked at her, then at the baby in her arms, a tiny baby girl, her eyes closed, her cheeks rosy. My heart ached, but I didn't let my emotions overwhelm me. "Come in," I said, my voice colder than I intended. Claire stepped inside, placed the baby in the stroller she had brought, then sat down on the chair in the living room. I didn't make tea, didn't bring out cookies, as was my habit when I had guests. I just sat opposite her, waiting for her to speak. Claire looked down, fidgeting with her fingers, then looked up at me. "Mom, I just had her last week. I named her Emma, after your mother." She paused, as if waiting for my reaction, but I just nodded, saying nothing. She took a deep breath and continued. I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong, terribly wrong. At the party, I didn't think about your feelings. I scolded you in front of everyone. I let you be treated like an outsider. I don't deserve to be your daughter." I listened, but my heart felt frozen. I remembered the way Claire had stood in the kitchen, her eyes sharp, saying I didn't love her children. I remembered the way she hadn't corrected her friend when she called me the help. Her apology, like Thomas's letter, felt genuine, but it came too late. I had waited for it, had hoped for it, but now it only made me hurt more. Claire continued, her voice choked with tears. "Being a mother, I finally understand how much you sacrificed. I stay up all night with Emma, worrying about her every little thing, and I think about you, about the nights you stayed up for Thomas and me. I regret it, Mom. I didn't come for money, not for anything. I just wanted to see you, wanted you to know I'm sorry." I looked at her, saw her red eyes, saw the sincerity in her voice, but I also saw the wound in my own heart, still unhealed. I thought about the years I had worked myself to exhaustion, about the $1 million painting I had painted through tears, about the days I had gone without food so she could have new clothes. I had given her everything, but she had responded with indifference. I wasn't angry, but I couldn't forget. "Claire," I said, my voice slow, "I hear what you're saying. I know you regret it, but I can't forgive. Not now. I've been hurt too much, given too much. I need time not to forgive but to protect myself. And I'm okay with where I am now, even if people think I'm a lonely old woman." Claire looked down, tears falling onto the floor. "I understand, Mom," she whispered. "I just hope, one day, you'll give me a chance." I stood up and went to the porch, inviting Claire to join me. I didn't hug her. Didn't hold her hand the way I used to when she was little. I just let her sit there, looking at my small garden, where I was growing roses. I told her about my art class, about Miguel, about the paintings I had done in Tossa de Mar. I didn't tell her because I wanted to get closer, but because I wanted her to see that I was living. Not just the mother who only knew how to sacrifice, but a woman with her own life. Claire listened, nodding occasionally, but didn't say much. Baby Emma started to fuss and Claire stood up, asking to leave. As she walked out the door, she turned back to look at me. "Mom, I won't bother you anymore, but if you ever want to see Emma, I'll bring her anytime." I nodded, making no promises. Claire left, the stroller rolling slowly down the driveway. I closed the door, sat down on the chair, feeling like I had just run a long race. I didn't cry, but my heart was heavy. I thought about Emma, about how she was my granddaughter, but I couldn't open my heart, couldn't let myself be hurt again. I called Jane and told her about Claire. Jane, as usual, was blunt. "Sam, the kid came back when she put herself in your shoes. She should have done that as soon as her belly started showing." I smiled faintly, knowing Jane was right. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch, looking at the stars, thinking about Claire, about Thomas, about what was lost. I didn't want to forgive, didn't want to go back to being the mother who only knew how to give, but I also couldn't deny that Claire and Emma had made me think again, not about reconciliation, but about how I wanted to live. I took out my paintbrush and painted a small picture, a rose in my garden, blooming in the darkness. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. My way of reminding myself that I could still be beautiful, still be strong, no matter how hard the past tried to pull me back. I looked at the painting, thinking about Frank, the peace of old age. That's all I needed. In the months after Claire came, I continued my routine. Every morning I made coffee, watered the rose bushes that were now in full bloom in the garden, then drove to the community center. My art class grew, not just children but also some adults wanting to learn how to hold a brush. Miguel was still my favorite student. He was 11 now, more confident, and his painting of the colorful city hung in the center's small exhibition room. One day he ran up to me, hugged me, and said, "Miss Sam, I want to be an artist like you." I smiled, patted his head, but my heart ached. I thought about Claire, about the days she had also said that, but I pushed that thought away. I didn't want the past to interfere with these small joys. One morning, I received a call from Rachel, the manager of the community center. "Sam, would you like to organize an exhibition for the children?" she asked, her voice enthusiastic. "Just a small one so the kids can show off their paintings, and you could display a few of yours too." I hesitated. My paintings, even the ones from Tossa de Mar, were personal, my way of talking to myself. But then I thought about Miguel, about the other children, about the sparkle in their eyes when they painted. "Okay," I said, "let's do it for the kids." We prepared for the exhibition for a few weeks. The children chose their best paintings, and I helped them arrange and frame them. I also chose 3 of my own: the sunset over the sea in Tossa de Mar, the boy flying a kite, and the rose blooming in the darkness I had painted after Claire came. I didn't want to show off, just wanted them to be there as part of my story. Rachel hung a small sign in front of the exhibition: "Art from the Heart, Exhibition by Children and Samantha Miller." I looked at the sign, feeling strange. Samantha Miller, not Thomas and Claire's mother, but a woman, an artist. On the day of the exhibition, the community center was more crowded than I had imagined. Parents, neighbors, and even some strangers came to see. The children ran around, pointing at their paintings, beaming. Miguel stood beside his city painting, explaining to everyone, "This is a place where no one is sad." I stood in a corner, watching him, feeling proud. An old woman approached me, took my hand. "Miss Sam, your paintings are so beautiful. They remind me of my hometown." I smiled, thanked her, feeling like I was reliving the days in Tossa de Mar when strangers complimented my paintings in the square. But then, in the distance, I saw a familiar figure. Claire, holding baby Emma, stood in the doorway, quietly looking around. Beside her was Thomas, wearing his old jacket, his hands in his pockets, his eyes downcast. I froze. my heart pounding. What were they doing here? I hadn't invited them, hadn't told them about the exhibition. I stood there, trying to stay calm, not wanting them to ruin this day. Claire looked at me from afar, her eyes hesitant, but she didn't approach. Thomas didn't either. They just stood there, watching the children, looking at the paintings, then left before the exhibition ended. I didn't know what they thought. Didn't know if they had seen my paintings. I just knew I didn't want to talk. Didn't want to face them. After the exhibition, Rachel came over, patted my shoulder. "Sam, you did a great job. The kids love you. And so does this whole town." I smiled, but my heart was still heavy. When I got home, I sat on the porch, thinking about Claire and Thomas. I heard from a friend at the center that they were living separately, that Thomas was working at a repair shop and Claire was busy with Emma. They hadn't contacted me, no calls, no letters anymore. I didn't know if they truly regretted what they had done, or if they had just come to the exhibition out of curiosity. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to keep my distance, keep my peace. That night, I took out my paintbrush and painted a new picture. A road leading to the sea, like in Taça de Mar, but this time, the road had no end. It just stretched out, disappearing into the horizon. I painted slowly, each brushstroke a promise to myself. I would keep going, even if I didn't know where I was going. The painting wasn't perfect, but it was mine, my story, not Thomas's, Claire's, or anyone else's. I thought about Frank, about the days we loved each other, about how he used to say, "Sam, you are my light." If he were here, maybe he would be proud. Not because I was a mother, but because I was Samantha, a woman who had fallen and gotten back up. I thought about Emma, about how she was my granddaughter, but I couldn't be a grandmother. Not when my heart was still full of scars. I thought about Thomas and Claire, about their apologies, but I couldn't forgive. Not because I was mean, but because I needed to protect myself, needed to hold on to what I had built. I looked at the painting, put down my brush, then went out to the garden, sitting under the stars. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know if Thomas or Claire would come back, or if I would live the rest of my life in this house, alone. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had lived through the most painful days, had found myself again in Taça de Mar, had built a new life with the children, with the garden, with my brushstrokes. I didn't need my children to feel valuable. I didn't need anyone to feel alive. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air. I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I knew I would be okay, no matter what the road ahead held. My last painting, The Road Leading to the Sea, was a reminder that this life was still long, and I would keep going. With my paintbrush in hand, with my own heart. Are you satisfied with this ending? And if you were in Samantha's position, would you easily forgive the suffering and injustice caused by the children you worked so hard to raise? Not everyone can open their hearts to accept those who have hurt them again. Please leave your comments below. We are happy to listen to different perspectives. This is the inspiration and motivation for us to continue to build and develop new, better, and more meaningful stories. If you love this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. See you in the latest stories.